Welcome to the Early Wedge presented by BetMGM. I am your host, Eric Cohen, otherwise known as EC. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the SportsLine YouTube page. Only, 6 weeks, less than that out from football season when the content will be out there often. We'll just put it that way. It's easy for me to say. You know, it's amazing when you come on the show, and we're talking before the show about, golf fixes. I kind of have an issue right now with my short putts, and I can't make anything inside of 3 feet, which sounds weird, but normally those are gimmies, but it is what it is. It just makes what you watch on TV with the pros makes it all that much more impressive. Like Rory McIlroy was 496 of 496 before the U.S. Open. Well, we won't talk about Rory McIlroy, nor my picks last week, but let's bring in the stars of the show because I do want to talk about their picks. We have Patrick McDonald, the star writer from CBSSports.com. Yes, you are. Star golf writer who, there you go, with the perfect wave. And then we have the guy who is absolutely on fire. It is the host of the Early Edge every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern. It is Sia Nejad. I mean, Sia, you are hitting every one of these alternate tournaments left and right. Congratulations.
Well, good news. Thank you. This also has the feel of an alternate tournament. But yeah, it started with Davis Thompson a few weeks ago, and then we hit the Pearson Coody first round leader at 60-1 the week after. And then last week we hit the first round leader at another 60-1 shot, Ben Silverman. And of course, we capped it off with Nick Dunlap at 45-1. Just reciting history here, not bragging, just laying out the facts for everybody. And, we're not at the FedEx Cup playoffs yet. And I do think this tournament, and I just mentioned it, kind of has the air of what we had at the Barracuda and the ISCO the 2 prior weeks. So I do think maybe we have another, 40 or 35 or 60-1 shot out there for us.
Hey, I'll take any help I can get right now after my picks last week, which were dreadful. Picked 4 golfers last week. Top 40 golfers in the world, if not higher. They all missed the cut. It was what it was. All right, Patrick. So Xander goes out and wins his second major. What does he have to do to be player of the year over Scottie Scheffler at this point?
Oh, that is a good question. It should be noted that it is voted by his peers, correct? And so let's say we give a point scale to everyone. I've often looked at the players as kind of half a major. So let's say majors are worth 4, the players are worth 2, and everything else is 1. So you have 4 plus 2 for Scotty, 6 plus 4 other wins, right? 10, and then Xander's at 8. So probably if he wins the FedEx Cup playoffs, he might get it, honestly. It could be close.
All right, so if he wins at East Lake, that's it. What about an Olympic gold medal? So let's say neither of them win at East Lake and one of them wins an Olympic gold medal.
Well, I think if Scotty does like anything else, it's like for sure his. But I would take, I would take Xander's season.
Would you really? See, what would you say? Whose season would you take? Scotty with 6 wins in the Masters or Xander with 2 wins being 2 majors?
I would take Scotty's season. I mean, I know why Patrick said that because, at the end of your career, we're counting majors more than we're counting anything else. But 6 wins is pretty compelling. And I do think he's going to win the FedEx Cup playoffs. So he'll be able to cap it off with that. We'll see. We have to wait and see on that one. But if it was 5 versus 2 majors, that'd be a little different. But I think the 6 signifies the dominance we saw from him on the front end of the year, kind of going into the middle and through the middle of the year. That type of dominance, I think, is more noteworthy, believe it or not, than the 2 majors.
You know what I would take? Scottie Scheffler having won $28 million this year to Xander Schauffele's 15. I mean, at some point, now, I think Xander, with that said, I think Xander will win at East Lake. He is probably the best player on the PGA Tour historically at East Lake that's currently playing. Patrick, I'm sure you'd probably agree with that. Scotty, what we saw the other year where he kind of blew that one was against Rory, where he kind of choked that one away a little bit.
Last year, too, a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm telling you, Xander's got a shot. So it's an interesting debate. All right, let's move on to this tournament. I mean, listen, I don't even know what to say, but Patrick, give me a reason to get excited, I guess, for the 3M Open, please.
Well, like every great sports league, the most important time is around the corner. It's not past us. You want to talk about the major championships and everything. It's the playoffs, baby. Everything matters in the playoffs. And it's kind of sneaking up on us with the Olympics, which doesn't count for the PGA Tour. Obviously, you only have 2 events left. So a lot of guys need a big week and a lot of notables, right? Your boy Keith Mitchell, EC, outside the top 70. Former winners on the PGA Tour, like a Kurt Kitayama's outside the top 70. Defending champion Lee Hodges is as well. And I'm honestly really intrigued. Not a ton of them are in the field this week, but just look online at the 50 to 70 range, because those inside the top 50 are going to be in the signature events next year. And you have guys in that range like a Victor Hovland, like a Minwoo Lee, like a Jordan Spieth, who, you know, moving into the postseason, that they got to somehow figure out a way to qualify for the BMW Championship.
Sia, I know this is right up your alley, considering your success the last few weeks with the ISCO and the Barracuda. You said earlier that this kind of feels like an alt event, so you got to be jumping for joy, knowing, hey, I got FRLs, I got outrights, I'm ready to crush it this week.
It feels exactly the same as the last 2 weeks. I understand we have a couple big names at the top, but I don't think it's not like a tidal wave of talent at the top. So I truly look at this field the same way. And again, I think there's a lot of opportunity here. I think it's interesting. The books haven't been as quick to release a lot of stuff like a regular tournament. They're almost treating this like an alt event, which I think is interesting, but that doesn't take away from the fact that the odds are what they are in the outright market, in the finishing position market, first round leader market. And I plan to exploit all of that.
Well, I will be tailing your picks because you're on a heater. So that's how we make money on this program. All right. My storyline is it worth riding the hot hand of 3 of the top 5 finishers from Royal Troon, Billy Horschel, Justin Rose, and I don't know how to pronounce his name, Patrick. You want to help me? Is it Tristan? Is it Thriston? Do we know how to pronounce Mr. Lawrence's first name?
You got it right the first time, but I will say, not to steal your thunder, I would not ride the hot hand of Justin Rose this week.
I'm not riding the hot hand of any of them. I think Billy will play well.
He's not in the field.
Oh, he isn't? Oh, he dropped out?
He did.
Okay, so I saw that he was in. So when I wrote that, it's okay. Well, we're not riding Justin Rose. I'm not riding Tristan after what he did. Actually, I live bet him going into the final round, and he had a one-shot lead. So I had him. Crazy EC parlays. Here we go. Tristan Lawrence to win, and Matt Jordan top 10 with ties. And Jordan finished T10. And
wow.
I mean, it would have been like 50 to 1.
Wow.
Going to the final. I mean, it's not a bad ticket, right?
Two-stroke lead going into the back 9.
He had no shot.
All right, see, come on.
He played really well. He played really well, but I mean, somebody tweeted at me. Hopefully, they're in the chat. Right when we were at like hole 5 or when those guys were still on the front 9, it asked me who was going to win, and I said Xander because I just didn't listen. He was good. He was better than I thought he was going to be. Lawrence was, but I thought this was Xander's. Once we got to getting to the turn, it just seemed like Xander's tournament.
Patrick, at what point did you realize Xander had this tournament locked up? Was it like 15 or even before that?
Before, when Scotty Scheffler 4-putted the 9th for double.
Yeah.
You didn't buy.
Once he exited stage left, he was gone.
You didn't buy the great Tristan Lawrence?
No. Which, I mean, he didn't really do anything wrong.
Right.
Xander just really took control of this tournament.
All right, let's move on to DFS picks. It's interesting because, not to spoil the graphic before it comes on, but we're all agreeing on the big fade this week. So, Patrick, I'm going to start with you. We're not going to talk about your big fade, but I want to talk about a player that's been up and down. I kind of picked him a few weeks ago, Seamus Power, and he's a pretty good price this week. He's played better golf lately. Why are you playing him at 7,300?
For all the reasons you just said. I'm going to take the Scottish Open away where he finished outside the top 60, still made the cut. Iron play wasn't great, but you look at what he's doing. He's finding fairways with consistency, hitting it pretty far out there, and making a ton of putts. In the iron play before the Scottish Open, which you could say, oh, it's a little windier over there, links golf, some differences. Back in the States, it was great, right? Finishing inside the top 20 there at the the Travelers Championship in the John Deere Classic. So I'm going back to the well with him. I loved him at the John Deere Classic. Love him this week. Austin Eckroat, he won on a tricky PGA National, another golf course where there's a lot of variance, a lot of water in play, like you will have this week. The ball striking is great. He's top 10 in this field over the last 3 months, off the tee and driving accuracy. Approach play is awesome. Iron play, short game, not so much, but he's done well on these greens before, has a top 20 finish to his name, so I'll take a chance there. Zach Blair, in that playoff at the ISCO Championship that we are now calling the WASCO, T2 finished there. Iron play also awesome. Missed the cut at the Barracuda. That's fine though, just really because of a faulty putter. One start here, T13 last season. So I'm gonna ride the wave of momentum with Blair, and then the big fade. You alluded to it. Sahith Theegala 0 for 3 here in terms of making cuts. Very volatile when you mix a volatile player with a volatile golf course. I don't like that match, and so that's why I will be fading Sahith.
Sia, I get my gold star this week because I read your column on SportsLine, and one of the players that you talked about was JT Poston. Now, listen, when you're on a heater, I'm reading anything and everything you're putting. I mean, I read Patrick's too. I saw what he put out there as well. Spoiler, I mean, I got to do some homework for the show, right? JT Poston's a guy you really like. At 9,200 seems like a really fair price for him this week.
It does seem like a fair price, but it's going to seem like an overprice to most people because his recent form hasn't really been good at all. It's been very below average, and it's part of the reason I like to look at weighted stats as opposed to just standard strokes gain stats. And what that tells me is that his gameplay, his strokes gain metrics don't look quite as bad, when you put the weighted measurement on it. And I think at 9,200, given his history, I'm going off the top of my head here, but I believe 3 years ago, he was 28th, and then it progressively got better to 11th. And then he was second last year. It was either 11th or 10th 2 years ago. But the point I'm making is he's very comfortable here. This is a very good bounce back spot for him. If you were talking about the Open Championship, for example, or even the Scottish Open, and you're looking for somebody to like bounce back into form, that's not exactly the place where I'd want to see that. But I do value course history here, especially with guys that have done well, but their recent form is shaky. And because that recent form is shaky, he's not going to get a lot of ownership, period. Like all the guys around him are going to get ownership. He's not going to get a lot because he's not a very sexy name. I like it at 9,200. Again, this is a DFS play more than it is anything else. And a couple other names that aren't very sexy to people, Chandler Phillips, these are both in the 6K range. I probably wouldn't go too much lower than 6,800. You kind of don't have to. But because these two guys are in the 6K range specifically, and because people look at ranges and they tell themselves, well, pricing's kind of soft, I'm not going to go below 7K. Just keep in mind, like somebody that's 7,200 is pretty much the same player as somebody that's 6,700 and 7,100 and 6,800 and so on and so forth. They're all just kind of grouped together. They got to go in some little tier. And I think because these guys are 6,900 and 6,800 respectively, I'm talking Chandler Phillips and Ben Coles, they're going to get overlooked. And I think they're both really good plays. Listen, you can be a bomber here. A lot of bombers win here. We've seen that with the winners in the past 4 or 5 years. But if you actually look at the leaderboard, it's gameplay like Chandler Phillips has or Ben Coles have, where they're accurate off the tee. Their off the tee metrics aren't like, doing them a ton of favors, but they're accurate off the tee. Their approach play is good. Their putting is good. And that's what I'm looking for some of these lower end players that I think could easily top 20, top 30 this tournament. So I'll just group those two together because they checked all the same boxes. And then Sahith is another fade for me. Listen, 0 for 3. Like if this was a 9,300 Sahith, maybe it's a different conversation because certainly the upside is there. But for him to flip the script and then all of a sudden win a tournament or top 2 or top 3, I just don't see it. So 10,300, it's a big no for me.
Patrick, before we move along, I want to ask you about the form. Based on what we saw at Royal Troon last week, the winds were up. Everything was a mess. Do you put any stock into that going forward, that a player played badly in the first or second round? Tony Finau, for example, played poorly. Are you holding that against him as he makes the across the world flight ish to Minneapolis?
Now, I would say the most concerning part about missing the cut at the Open is those players had to deal with the CrowdStrike outage at the airports. A lot of those guys were stranded in Orlando. I saw Tony Finau on the floor of an airport before he had to get a hotel. So all those guys who missed the cut who are playing this week had to deal with that beforehand.
I'll tell you what, I can't remember a golf tournament ever that I have bet on where I was so far, where literally all of my bets were dead going into day 3. I didn't even have a chance because all of the amount of big names that missed the cut. Patrick, can you remember an event off the top of your head where you saw such like Bryson, Rory, Finau, Fleetwood, Hatton, just to name a few, all missed the cut? It just seems shocking to me.
10 out of the top 20 in the world, right? Ludwig in there as well.
Yeah.
No, maybe the Players Championship when it was pretty wonky that one year and all those guys were caught in the bad wave. But no, not in recent memory, or at least at the top of my mind, I can remember something like that.
All right, Sia, I was just delaying for what everybody was waiting for. Just needed to get a bigger audience before you're going to help win people some more money because you're on the heater when it comes to FRLs. What is that? Is that 2 weeks in a row?
Yeah, 2 weeks in a row. And I got to say this because it's important because I have a 60-1 shot here. Both first-round leaders over the last 2 weeks, Pearson Coody, Ben Silverman, they were both 60-1. And honestly, it begs the question, why didn't I just bet all the 60-1 guys? So as we go through this show, I'm actually going to look up who all the 60-1 guys are because apparently those are the ones that hit. And just for the sake of putting it out there, Sam Stevens is also 60-1. Austin Eckroat, who I love, by the way. He was a guy that I kind of overlooked quite a bit in my research. He didn't pop initially, and so he just hasn't really been in my consciousness, but I do like that DFS play at 7,200. I think that's a steal. He's 60-1. I don't know if he's the morning wave or not. Patrick Rogers, 60-1. McNeely, 60-1. Mackenzie Hughes, Mac Meisner. That's the 60-1 shot. So maybe you should just bet those. But these are the ones I'm betting. I've got 2 long shots that are 100 and 110-1. So you can wait for that at the end of the show. But Keith Mitchell, Nick Dunlap, Ben Griffin, Lee Hodges. I'll just address these kind of together, but individually at the same time. Keith Mitchell, I do think can win this tournament, which I think will surprise some people. What I think's so interesting about him is that his putting's been really good here. 2 out of the 3 times, not only has he gained with the putter, but he's gained significantly with the putter. The weird part is the reason why he hasn't won the tournament is because the approach play's been kind of a disaster here, which tells me, and I do need to go maybe a little deeper, see how many water balls we saw. It tells me that he took some chances on approach that he probably shouldn't have taken. And what I'd like to think about Keith Mitchell, and we'll get to this in the outright department, is that he's been at this course enough, and he's finished 5th the last 2 times, where we know he's comfortable on the putting green for some reason, and we know that he's made enough mistakes with the approach play that can be corrected this time around. And oh, by the way, the ball striking looks really good, like it always does for Keith Mitchell. So at 50-1, if you don't like him as a tournament winner, he's got the morning wave. I really like him at 50-1 here. Nick Dunlap, a guy who we cashed at 45-1 last week, of course, at the Barracuda. I just, I think you can make the argument, maybe his foot is off the gas, but he has a certain demeanor about him. If you saw how he won that tournament, it was just like another hole to him when he finished 18, or I should say when the others finished 18. And he just seems like the type of player, you look at the metrics, or he's just going to always have his foot on the gas. He's trying to make up that money that he missed as an amateur, now turned pro. Like him at 50-1. Ben Griffin, I think, could get sideways in this tournament potentially because of his accuracy issues, but he really graded out well for me. Now, if he's dialed in on approach and putter, watch out. That's the 3rd 60-1 in a row we're going to hit. Lee Hodges, this feels like I'm chasing a little bit because he won last year. But if you look at the year before that, he was awesome too. His ball striking was amazing. His putting was amazing. He just likes it here. So at 70-1, I'm willing to dive right back in on Lee Hodges.
Interesting one thing that you brought up, Sia, about the non-reaction from Nick Dunlap. It's kind of disappointing to me. I want to see the players get excited. Like Robert McIntyre, when he won the other week, and obviously that was a special thing. But I mean, that was cool. It was like I want Bryson DeChambeau when he wins at the U.S. Open and he's doing his that's what I want to see. It's kind of boring when great. I mean, Patrick, am I off base here? Am I crazy with that thought, or am I onto something?
He's just a young kid. He'll learn. He'll adapt.
No. You guys are both wrong. This is the mentality of a champion. What he's thinking in his head is, all right, I checked that box that I knew I needed to check. Now I got to go to the next thing. It's part of the reason I think he'll be good at this tournament and that maybe he's going to be your first round leader. There's a certain mentality where if you sit there and you revel in your victory, subconsciously or consciously, you're taking your foot off the gas a little bit. Those guys that don't celebrate, like a Scotty Scheffler, well, of course he celebrates now, but he has that sort of demeanor about him where he's always even keel, even in the celebratory moments. Those are the guys you have to watch out for. Those are the guys that have the long-standing careers with a bunch of trophies and a bunch of victories and a bunch of money in the bank account. I'm telling you, this Nick Dunlap guy, he's programmed differently, and that's why he didn't celebrate.
You know who isn't programmed differently when playing sports? This guy, because I celebrate when I can, because I am not a champion. There's a reason I wanted to do this and not be an athlete, especially when I'm 4-putting from 10 feet. All right, coming up next, I love the picks in the matchup section this week after we hear from one of our sponsors.
Football action continues. Are you ready for this? Ready to take chances? As the gridiron is taken over by the Great White North. It's time to storm the fortress. It's time to fight on the battlefield. Catch the Canadian Football League on CBS Sports Network.
I don't like to be that guy that I don't want to say copies a pick because I didn't intentionally copy until I saw what Patrick had. But I mean, especially coming off last week, which was kind of a disaster for me. Needed to get some winners. And then I looked and I said, well, should I delete it? Nah, it shows some synergy with the group. All right, Patrick, why are you rolling with Akshay over Sahith?
It is. And while Sia has been the king of the outrights and first round leaders, I have luckily been decent in this department, being a little picky. So yeah, Akshay minus 110 over Sahith Theegala over at BetMGM. Bhatia missed the cut as well in his open debut, but you think back just a few weeks ago, contending at the Rocket Mortgage, playing well at the Travelers Championship. He drove the ball great still at Royal Troon, and although it's his tournament debut, that's what I'm really keying in on. He is the much better driver between him and Sahith. We already outlined Sahith's struggles at this golf course, so I'm going to say, hey, Bhatia minus 110. At that, I will definitely take.
All right. Now, I love this pick as well, Sia, from you, because Norlander in the next section is one of my picks. And he's not going up against a lot of Nordic, as we learned what that was earlier on an earlier show this year, or Swedish. It's kind of a weird category, but why do you like him at plus 105?
Yeah, the reason I have that sort of that slash there is because at some books it's listed as top Nordic, and at some books, like I think at FanDuel, it's listed as top Swedish, and I assume that's because they all happen to be Swedes. Henrik Norlander, Vincent Norrman, and the only other guy is a guy that I've actually never heard of. Tobias Johnson, I believe is his name. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong.
Wow.
Is it Janssen? Patrick, do you know who that is?
I do not. That
Okay.
is a name I do not know.
I mean, he literally, like when you pull up stats, it's like one Korn Ferry Tour event. Like that's all you see. So he doesn't have a lot of experience here too. So obviously this appears to be between Norlander and Vincent Norrman. Norman's had some good experience here, I believe, but Norlander is one of those guys that, you know, I think I picked him like randomly as a first round leader like a couple of months ago, and it didn't work out for me at all. But now he's starting to showcase some form. Again, against Vincent Norrman, who's showcased no form whatsoever across any strokes gain metric, this seems like a really good find for me. This is one of those situations where I didn't have a lot. There's not a lot of matchups out there. I do like both of your Bhatia over Theegala plays, by the way. That was one I was going to go with as well. This was my favorite one so far in my SportsLine article. To the extent more come out, I'll put in another matchup or two.
All right. So this guy, Tobias Johnson, he is a senior at Mercer University,
Okay.
and he is an amateur. So I would say that's a wise play to fade him. If he makes the cut, good for him. Hey, I'm going to go with the Bhatia over Theegala play as well at BetMGM. But then how about this play? Eric Van Rooyen at plus 150 is the top South African. Here's who we're going up against at BetMGM here. We're going up against Tristan Lawrence, Garrick Higo, MJ Duffy, and Dylan Fratelli. The latter three don't have a lot of form, and I don't know much about. I mean, Lawrence had a nice, part of his tournament, except when I bet him, and then he went to, what happened on the back nine, on the final nine of the tournament. So I feel pretty good about that. Van Rooyen from went to school in Minnesota, has family out here, has not played very well here, unfortunately, but he has 4 top 8 finishes in the weaker events this season, the events that Sia preys on. So you know what? It's Eric Van Rooyen time in the 3M Open. Just come through for something for me, please. All right, let's move on to finishing positions. All right, Sia, you have more than I do this week, which is almost stunning that I'm not taking up the screen with all my plays. You got 5 of them, so go ahead.
Yeah, this is interesting. For those of you that are new to the show, I mean, you don't have to take all of these if you don't want to. 5 is more than I think I've probably ever had. And typically I like, especially since they're all like very good plus money, typically I like to lower my unit size on this. So just an FYI on that. I like all of these plays. I think all of these guys translate over to DFS as well if you want to play them. Grillo has really great experience here. I mean, he's coming in with I guess decent enough form. But I really like his experience here. We're getting a T30 at plus 150. I thought about T20 at plus 220. You all can assess your risk tolerance and see what you want to do there. But in some books don't have the T30 market. So if you want to play him T20 at plus 220, I like that as well. Lee Hodges, I already mentioned when we were talking first round leaders. He just finds something here. His recent form isn't very good, but it's not just last year's win that speaks to me. It's the year before that, where he was well inside the top 20 and the ball striking and putting was good yet again. So I think Lee Hodges finds his form in the Twin Cities here. And then the other three are T40 plays. Ben Silverman, who I've been on, he was my first round leader last week at the Barracuda. That hit at 60-1 at plus 110. Chandler Phillips, T40 at plus 160, and Ben Coles at plus 160, also in the top 40 market. All of these guys check a lot of the boxes. They're not going to be bombers off the tee, but they're going to be relatively accurate. They're going to be dialed in with the approach play, which means, just to contextualize that for you, that means they're going to go the safe route. Probably a few less water balls than some of those guys that are going to bomb it, but also those guys can make eagle and birdie a little bit easier. But I like the approach that Silverman, Phillips, and Coles are likely to take. I like that they can all get hot with the putter. So I honestly think all of these could hit. Odds are they're not all going to hit, but at the plus 110, plus 160, plus 160 in the T40 market, hard to pass up.
Yeah, and I really like your Grillo play, obviously. I'm going a little more aggressive here for a top 10 at plus 450. These all include ties. I guess the sports books have generally copied BetMGM, and you're finding with ties on all of them. Now, I like to parlay. That's another story. But for those of you who don't, you can find those on plenty of sports books. I got this on DK. So Grillo, as you mentioned, Sia, in 4 trips here, he has a 3rd, 2nd, and 10th place finish, and he's gained shots on approach in 8 of his last 9 events, which is a good formula at plus 450. That's aggressive, but with ties, I'll take it. All right, I never thought of all season I'd be taking a Keith Mitchell play for a top 20 plus 150. I know you're surprised, Patrick. I get it. Listen, his putter has stunk, but he had, before last week, he's gained shots with his irons in 14 straight events. That's pretty darn good. Guy just can't putt. He was like me. Well, nobody's like, no, I'm not going that far. All right. He's lost strokes around the green and putting in 7 of 8, which is not good. But as Sia mentioned earlier, 5th here in 2021 and 2023. So pretty darn good there. And Zach Blair, we've talked about him a little bit. Top 20 at plus 400. Nice call, Patrick, on that one. Gained nearly 9 shots on approach at the ISCO, or at the WSCO, as you called it. T24 at the U.S. Open. Pretty darn good for that field. The best field in golf. And then Norlander, who Sia talked about in the last segment, was 11th last week at the Barracuda and has gained four shots ball striking, 5 around the greens. The putter hasn't been great, but T23 here in 2020. So we got a chance here, plus 450. I love this number, so I'm going to take a shot with that. Now, if you're not going to parlay these and just want to play them safe, well, if you don't, just try them at BetMGM. And if you aren't a BetMGM customer, well, I'm not sure what you're waiting for. New BetMGM customers can sign up today and get up to $1,500 in bonus bets. Just place your first wager of at least $10, and you'll receive up to $1,500 instantly if your bet loses with bonus code EDGE. That's EDGE EDGE. Coming up next, who is taking Keith Mitchell to win? How dare they disobey my graphic after we hear from one of our sponsors. College football cannot come soon enough. I know C is so excited for his James Madison Dukes once again. And Patrick, who's your school, by the way? I don't even know.
It was the school that used to be the best football team in the Commonwealth of Virginia, unfortunately. But I will have to give that to Sia's alma mater. Oh, it is Virginia Tech. All
right. Well, don't sleep on that Arizona Virginia Tech matchup. I think in 2029, home and home starts then. So I will try to make the trip up to Blacksburg to watch that one. All right, back to
Virginia Tech is by all means the sleeper in the ACC this year.
I've heard that about Syracuse as well, but okay, I'll do my homework. They have Virginia Tech has a good quarterback. Drones, I believe, is his name. Yeah. Pretty good player. We'll talk a lot of college football and early edge programming coming up, but trying to delay it here. All right, Jake, let's see it. Oh, man, that's dirty right there. So I put Xander Schauffele on this list after he lost the Wells Fargo. Well, if you follow golf every week, which you probably do for watching this program, he's won 2 majors since then. Scotty Scheffler I put on right before he won his first tournament, and he's won 5 more after that. The rest of this list, not bad. Well, Shane Lowry, we talk about that every week. So, all right.
You got one guy
who is a – go ahead.
You had a sweat last week on this list. I will say probably some validation, and Sam Burns got through the easiest of the conditions. He woke up Sunday. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm in the penultimate group, shot 80. Maybe some validation for Justin Thomas as well. Kind of the same situation, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Have a chance on Sunday. Let me hit one onto the beach for my first tee shot. Triple bogey.
Hey, can I just say too, EC, that yes, of course, the Scotty Scheffler, you have the qualifier under plus 1,000, which you were trying to make at that time a larger point that you don't want to take short odds in a sport that has a lot of variance. So I get all that. Shane Lowry doesn't even really count. Xander is a funny one. Like that one I can like chuckle at with the Scotty one a little bit. But we do have to give you a little bit of credit. Like, can we all, and I'm including you in this, Patrick, stop with the Tommy Fleetwood thing? Even last week, people picking Tommy Fleetwood. Listen, I didn't want to throw any stones because, there are stretches where I'm not very good in the outright department either. But seriously, everybody, Tommy Fleetwood, and then it was like, it's not on American soil. Like, Tommy Fleetwood in contention is not a thing. He'll either double bogey the final hole on Saturday or the first couple of holes on Sunday. Stop it with the Tommy Fleetwood thing. I know the long locks and the name sounds cool and all that stuff. Tommy Fleetwood is a poor man's Sepp Straka.
All right, but hold on a second.
Wow.
I went a little far there, but I'm trying to make a point here.
And I would argue Shane Lowry is a poor man's Tommy Fleetwood.
I thought Shane Lowry was going to win. I thought after day 2, I thought this tournament was over. I thought Lowry was playing too well. I thought, all right, I'm just going to hammer Lowry. Yeah, that didn't go so well. And then we saw what happened on Saturday. Yeah, I know. I bet. Oh, absolutely. Going into Saturday. Absolutely. I thought it was over. Plus 190. I'm like, good. You're giving me plus 190 on the guy who's going to win. All he's got to do is shoot par.
Remember, he was one of my outrights. I didn't have a big outright card. Oh, I did because of the long shots, but he was one of my 3 like kind of primary outrights at 45-1. I kind of didn't think he was going to close ultimately. I thought he was flying a little too high there, but I really thought we had a chance.
Did I see that? Jake, will you pull up the list for this section? I'm kind of confused about something. Patrick, what's going on here? Where are we at? Keith Mitchell's in this tournament. I think Grayson Sigg is play. What's going on here? Where are we at here?
Throwing darts, baby. I'll leave this section for you guys.
Wow.
I agree.
Does that mean there's a lot of long shots?
There's a handful for sure.
I love that so much. Okay.
All right, Sia. Let's see. I mean, Clanton, an amateur, and Keith Mitchell, who never wins. Start there.
Yeah. Clinton, the amateur, like the amateur, if you will. I do worry about the fact that he has no experience here. Like this was like him and Keith Mitchell. I was sort of tentative about. However, it's not like they're 12-1 or 16-1 or even 18-1. I feel like these are good numbers. Luke Clanton is the type of guy that like in a year we might be talking about in a much different context. And when we talk about the level of talent at this tournament and how he fits this tournament so well with his off the tee game in particular, that he can be accurate and long off the tee and get hot with everything else. I think 25-1 is a pretty fair number. The Keith Mitchell one intrigues me more than anything because it's so rare that you see a situation where Keith Mitchell is a good putter on a course in 2 out of 3 tries. And the one try where in the 3 times he's played here where he lost with the putter, it wasn't like a complete disaster. He lost, I think, around 2 strokes, which is bad. But the 2 where he gained way more than 2. He was like, he is clearly comfortable on these greens in the small sample size that we have. And the fact that he's been losing on approach again, it tells me that he is not attacking the course correctly, that he's taking too many chances. And now he's 3 years in. He's finished 5th in the last 2 tries he's been here. I think we have a guy coming in who's striking it really well, knows the course a lot better, and actually putts here. And so I'm going to get 35-1 on a guy who can't win. I get that, but it's at a course and with a talent pool that is also a bunch of guys that either haven't won or can't win. So this is the perfect time, especially with that putter issue, to take Keith Mitchell. JT Poston, I already addressed at 35-1. I like the number. He's very comfortable here. I think course history does matter. He knows how to attack this course. Not that it's a complex course, but I do think that does matter. And then Ben Griffin, I do think there's some volatility there. He was 55-1 when I published my article. He's 50-1 pretty much everywhere else, which is fine. Not much of a hit you took there. I think Griffin, if he can keep it in the fairway and keep it out of the water, I should say, if he gets hot with the approach and the putter, watch out. Like he will be in contention.
So, you guys know that I love these without markets. I'm not worried about Thagala, and I'm not worried about Sam Burns. Both of those are on my do not bet list. Akshay is concerning. He can make a lot of birdies, and Finau won here a couple years ago. I just don't love the number at south of 15 to 1. I think it's like 12 to 1, 11 to 1, something like that. 10 to 1, something like, in that ballpark. But Patrick, I have a question for you before I make my picks. Who is the second best player on tour in strokes gained approach?
It is that man on your list right there.
And that would be?
Tom Hoge.
And one of the keys that we have seen at TPC Twin Cities are players who were dialed in on approach winning here. It's a longer approaches. So give me Tom Hoge. I'm going to play it without market. Maybe Finau goes and runs away with this, throw out his form from last week. But, I mean, he had 3 straight top 10s before that. Hoge at 25 to 1. And remember, I parlay these. So, like, I'll be watching the Early Edge tomorrow. I'll get some picks, and I parlay these. That's what I do. I mean, some people don't like it. It's what I do. That's how you got to get it right the first time, and it saves you money. So I'm going to parlay Hoge at 25 to 1. Van Royen I talked about earlier. I'm serious.
It saves you money? A parlay never saves you money.
Well, it does. And I'm going to tell you why. So if I bet
put less
Tom
on
Hoge,
it, see?
Yes.
If I bet
at a rate that is like a lot more frequent than anyway, go on.
All right. But if I want to win $1,000 on Tom Hoge, okay, I have to bet $40 outright. But if I take one of your picks on the Early Edge tomorrow, and I'm betting less than $20 on Tom Hoge. And we know it's going to hit as long as I don't jinx it like I did the other week. I mean, seriously, that's how we win with the parlay strategy. You like it, some you don't. Okay. I'm going to parlay Van Royen in there, and then Grillo, course for the course, 45 to 1. Love that. So, that's where I'm going with it. Just remember, parlays, they help the sports books, but when you hit them, it's so satisfying. Okay. All right, Patrick, you teased the long shot list. Wow. I mean, 6. We're 6 deep on the long shot list. You're stealing more of the screen than I am. That's why I had to go shorter this week. What do you got for us?
We'll start with, Sia alluded to him, 50 to 1. Ben Griffin, everything that he has said, he's talked about him so far this show. I think generally he's going to win a Gen Pop event, and this is certainly one of those. So I'm going with Ben Griffin. Kurt Kitayama, Kitty Cat, 50 to 1. Long hitter, great from tee to green. Name that movie, Kitty Cat.
So is it Vince Vaughn?
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's Swingers.
What?
Is it Swingers?
Oh no, Sia. Wedding Crashers.
Yeah, my bad. That was my second guess. Darn it.
Come on, Kitty Cat. Right. Third tee to green in this field over the last 3 months. You look at the longer hitters who have won here: Cam Champ, Matthew Wolff, Tony Finau. Kurt Kitayama fits in that category also. Austin Eckroat, as I talked about in the DFS section, love him this week. Same as Seamus Power. Eckroat's at 60, Power's at 80. I'm going to take a chance at that same number, 80 to 1. The Englishman, Matt Wallace, approach play has been awesome. Off the tee, plenty long as well. And the putter at this golf course has shown life in his 2 tournament appearances. And for some reason, I think it's only because of Finau that I get like a little Mexico Open vibe, even though it's nothing like it at all, because that course you can miss it everywhere. This course you cannot. But he was a factor there. So take that for what you will. Probably not that last part. And then Zach Blair, 175 to 1, playoff loss at the Wasco. So we're going to go right back to the well on that. He's a great fit statistically, just needs the putter to get going. Top 15 in this tournament last year. So I think there's some value in that number.
Even with Finau winning a couple years ago at this event, the average price of a pre-tournament winner at the 3M Open is 110 to 1. So just kind of keep that in mind. Bombs away. All right, I want to get to the chat before we get to we'll get to your picks here soon. Sia, Hef Sterling wants to know how many units I lost on Shane. Enough. The one that really burns me was the RBC Heritage from the other year. That one would have been a big win, and he totally blew it on the back 9, hit it in the water on that par 3. Do you remember that? Yeah, that chip. Disgusting. Yeah. Like, you remember the losses. You don't remember the wins as many. All right. Sites 501 asks another legitimate question. How is EC not destitute? I ask myself that every day. Now, when you start to see certain pictures come off the wall, that means I had to sell them to make golf bets. So as soon as that happens, you'll know that destitute is happening. All right. Sia, I don't need to parlay these guys in here because, I mean, we got bombs away here. I'll play these straights at 100 to 1, 110 to 1, 170 to 1. Sounds good to me.
Yeah, this is definitely bombs at Wayville. I do want to address a couple things in the chat. David Tuck asks, what about Cam Davis? I don't know if you all have opinions on Cam Davis. I do think he's a good play here. The reason he didn't make the cut for me is because the putter's been really bad. But when I look at his history, 10th, 16th, 28th, 12th over the last 4, and I know that he's been a good putter in the past, I think he's an interesting play. I'm not betting on him, don't get me wrong, but in DFS, he's got some popularity, but that doesn't mean I think he's a terrible play at 8,900. So I think that's a good shout out on Cam Davis. I'll go right back to this first round leader thing. I gave you 4. All of them were 50 to 1 or longer. So they were all kind of deep shots. Well, these are deeper. Chandler Phillips at 100 to 1, Ben Coles at 110 to 1. I don't need to tell you what I already told you twice about those two guys. But in a first round leader market, morning tee times, like them both. And then my winner. All right. I actually think this is a legitimate long shot here at 170 to 1. This 170 to 1 number is at FanDuel. I think most of the other books have them in the 125 to 150 range. I'm referring to BetMGM, DraftKings. For whatever reason, FanDuel had the super long number on them. Listen, you've seen, if you look at the leaderboard from 2023 and 2022, you see names in there that don't fit the mold of who the winner was, like a Matthew Wolff some years ago, or a Tony Finau, or a Camp Champ type player. You see Martin Laird's in there. You see those types of players inside the top 5. And I think Ben Coles is that guy who is just going to keep it safe. And if he can get hot with the putter and the approach play, which I actually think he can, I actually think he can be in the conversation on Sunday. It's 171 or 125, 150 to 1 for a reason. But I've got my eye on Ben Coles this week.
All right. I mean, listen, with the way you've been picking them, I can't argue with that. And I don't have to parlay it. I can bet them. I'm in. All right. I only have one play here this week, which is shocking because usually I steal the screen for this one, but I just gave it to Patrick this time. Half my normal unit size, so I don't get destitute. Top 20 parlay at plus 1,600. Find this one on DK. Akshay Bhatia, Tom Hoagie, and Emiliano Grillo. So I like that one. Now, just wait. I got some live stuff for you, because we have to talk a little live, the LIV UK, playing it at a different course here. Sia, you're sitting this one out. Don't want to make a pick this time. But Patrick, you're going with another long shot. I mean, look, long shots galore for you. I'm taking the chalk, and you're going with a long shot. Adrian Meronk. How and why?
Yeah, 50 to 1 on Meronk, the Meronk star. He's hitting the ball great off the tee, not getting a ton out of his game. He made the cut at the Open, which was good to see, putted quite nicely. But this is a guy who kind of just was a winner the past couple of years on the DP World Tour before he made the transition to LIV. Had some decent starts this year, second last month at LIV Golf Houston, right behind Carlos Ortiz. So really just a bet on the number and the bet on the talent level.
Well, I'm betting on the chalk. Sorry, but I mean, I'm taking the easy way out here, but Bryson's due to win on LIV this year. I mean, he's won the U.S. Open, for goodness sakes, and he has 6 top 10s in 10 LIV events. This course has drivable par 4s. If the wind is down, he should crush it. Simple as that. Cam Smith, has won in the UK 2 years in a row, won the 2022 Open Championship at St. Andrews, won the LIV event last year over there. So I don't know, I'm just kind of feeling that trend. 3 top 10s in his last 7, despite his driver being not very good. But I'm going to hope that, wide open course, link style golf, that he plays better, assuming the weather holds up. And this number is really good at 18 to 1 for a player of Cam Smith's caliber. And this is a custom EC parlay. You knew I couldn't go a show without putting one of these together. John Rahm, who's finished in the top 10 of every LIV event that he's finished, and Cam Smith, top 10. Richard Bland, who has won 2 senior tour events, Englishman, and Paul Casey, another Englishman. 2 majors, thank you, yeah. And Paul Casey, 2 Englishmen, top 20s, which means they barely have to finish ahead of half the field, and you're getting plus 867, not with ties, but at DK. I'm telling you, this is the custom EC parlay of the week. Do with that as you. I mean, listen, there's a lot of value given out on the show, and this is probably the worst of it. But hey, I mean, it is. It's a 4-leg parlay. but I got to take my chance. I mean, listen, I'm taking my chances here. All right. Final thoughts. Patrick, start with you. What do you want to see at the 3M Open other than your picks win?
What do I want to see from the 3M Open? That's a great question, EC. You really put me on the spot there. So many different answers. Like some new plexiglass from 3M would be pretty cool to see. Some new reflective gear as well. I guess I would like to see chaos down the stretch, right? That's probably number one on my priority list. We've seen it before, like Scott Piercy a couple years ago. He takes his shoe off. He completely implodes. He has a blister on his heel. Tony Finau comes through last year. JT Poston, right? He made a triple bogey on the last hole, cost him, I don't know, like $300,000. It was a big thing. Oh my gosh, why did he go for the green in 2 when he was trying to win the golf tournament? And so although it's kind of a sleepy time for PGA Tour after the major season, it's a fun golf course where a lot of good golfers are probably going to be made look pretty stupid at some points.
You know what? I don't want to see chaos down the stretch if I have a player that I bet on in a parlay that can win, because I can't hedge this week. I'll be making my pilgrimage to the San Diego area this weekend, and there's no legal sports betting in California.
Watch out, San Diego.
I'm telling you what.
Hide your kids, hide your wives.
Del Mar Racetrack. What can I say? All right, Sia, what do you want to see this weekend?
Very interesting. I'm traveling to California this weekend as well.
Are you going to
hang out? I mean,
your location?
I don't know the geography. I'm not going to be in the San Diego area, like Huntington Beach, Newport Beach area.
That's a little bit north. Yeah, a little bit north.
Yeah.
Nice.
What am I looking forward to? So a couple things. I do think that the 30 to 80 to 1 range is going to be really interesting, because I think a lot of those guys are going to be in the conversation. I mean, I'm making an obvious point there, but I think one of them might win this tournament. I also think there's some live betting opportunities here too. I mean, I think this course can be easy, but there's like trouble lurking everywhere. And we didn't talk about the course dynamics, but there's water pretty much on almost every single hole. And you could have some guys in the lead, especially the lesser players that happen to be in the lead in the first or second round. You can have those guys fall back pretty quick, or have a chaser that's 7 back after day 1, all of a sudden close to 3 back day 2, and then eventually win the tournament. So I do think there's some live betting opportunities here. We'll talk about that on the Early Edge. We can talk about that on Twitter and otherwise. But I think this is going to actually be a really fun tournament. Real quick, EC, Joe Neuenfeld said, hey, you look like a guy that's gone to a ton of Imagine Dragons concerts. Have you ever been to an Imagine Dragons concert?
No, I do have bad taste in music, according to most, but Imagine Dragons is not one of them that I've ever seen in concert.
Yeah. I didn't think you looked like that.
90s rock.
Yeah, real quick before we close the show, just real quick. I know we got to get out of here. EC, your favorite band or singer of all time. Then Patrick, you go.
Do you really want me to admit this on here?
Yes.
My favorite band that I have seen many times, Counting Crows.
That's a great band. Okay, Patrick, go ahead.
I'm a Greta Van Fleet fan.
Okay.
Oh,
How about you, Sia?
Tommy Fleetwood crossover. Greta Van Fleetwood. Linkin Park. Easy one.
Oh, interesting.
An easy one for me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to find out about all of us on the Early Wedge, but that's what makes the show so much fun. Thanks to producer Jake for that graphic, if nothing else. No, putting together a great show as always. For Patrick McDonald and Sia Nejad, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for watching. And as I always like to say, let's hit it big. Good luck.